Hey everyone, my name's Sarah Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am answering your questions in our monthly series that I call Coffee and Questions. If this is your first time here, this is my opportunity to connect with you via Instagram. So every month I put up a poll on Instagram and you're able to ask your questions. I may answer them here. And then also from previous videos in the comment section. So I scour the comment section looking for your questions that you've asked on previous videos, and then I get to answer them here. If you are curious what questions I'm gonna be answering today, you can head on down to the description box and I've laid them all out there for you. I try to usually give you like a wide scope of different questions answered for you. And then make sure you follow me on Instagram because that's where I'm looking for questions from you and posting all sorts of other content and connecting, and you'll know the inside scoop about everything happening around here. Make sure you subscribe down below, and then let's get answering your questions. I am gonna start with your comments on Instagram and get through as many questions as I possibly can. And I'm gonna start with Gloria's question. She asked multiple really sweet, thoughtful questions, and this one is very appropriate for what I get to tell you about. So she asks, what would I like for my birthday? My birthday is coming up March 17th. I'm a St. Patrick's Day baby. And how you remember that, I have zero idea, but that is so thoughtful of you. And so I've actually been asked this question multiple times, and my answer is pretty much the same all the time, is always, you can't go wrong with gold jewelry. If you've seen me in previous videos, I am constantly wearing different pieces, sort of like a collection. I like layering things, and one of my favorite companies of high quality pieces that are at affordable prices is Ana Luisa Jewelry. So Ana Luisa, I've been purchasing from for years now. My favorite pair of gold hoops is from Ana Luisa, and you've probably seen them in previous videos. You've for sure seen other of their pieces that I have worn, and I frequently get asked about my jewelry. So this is sort of like a hobby. It's one of my favorite things to get, and I'm so excited to get to offer you 20% off. You can check out the description box down below for the link to go over there for their March Madness sale. Another thing I love about them is that they care about the planet. Any company that cares about the planet, that has been like a sort of a newish in the last few years, something that I've been really caring more about, trying to take steps in my life to be more responsible and caring for the planet. And they are a company that is carbon neutral. Everything from their packaging to their products, it is all supporting the planet, which I love. The other thing is just how it looks. So this, particularly this green set, I have been eyeballing for so long. This is basically a birthday gift for myself. And so they have this beautiful, this earring set, and then it goes with the necklace, and then I layered it with one of their chokers, but they have all sorts of other things that you can kind of put together. There's already layered pieces, and then I'll show you these earrings right here that I also have been eyeballing for so long. So when they came in the mail, I was so excited to get to wear their dainty pieces. They make me feel elegant, also trendy. They're good little spice up your life pieces. I'll frequently be in like sweats and a bodysuit, and I'll have on multiple bracelets, nice necklace, good set of earrings, and I just feel like it like spices up my life. It can make even sweatpants look super cute. So you can check out the description box down below. I do have a promo code for you for 20% off. And then make sure you take advantage of their sale, because not only is it good for yourself, and please treat yourself, but also think about the loved ones, any kind of girlfriends, any new moms. I know they have a mama necklace in their shop that I've actually purchased as a shower gift for a couple of my friends. So check out their shop. Link is down below, and that's what I want for my birthday, is gold jewelry that I can layer, and all those different pieces you can combine in different ways to make different looks based on what you're going for. The other really thoughtful question that she asked was, what is the best way to support the wonderful job that you're doing? Again, I'm like, you guys are so nice. To answer that, honestly, a recommendation is the best compliment. I think there's like a saying about that. I just can't remember what it is. But basically, tell other people about it. Share these videos. I do have tons of products in the store. Purchase a childbirth class. That stuff like helps me pay my bills so I can keep going and keep doing this and all the other things I'm doing. The other thing is, if you have labor and delivery nurse friends in your life or birth worker friends, like particularly doulas, send them my way, because I have trainings for them. And the idea, and really my dream for the world, is that we can shift the culture in obstetrics. So that's one of our taglines, is change the game in obstetrics. And one of the goals, whether it be through patient education, you guys, or whether it be through nurses, birth workers, providers, meaning doctors, midwives, is to help us be better for you. And so if you know people in that, you can always tell them about us, send them our way, and we will take lots of loving care of them. Adriana HDZ says, losing sensation in foot or leg after labor, normal, no epidural. Okay, so this, I saw this, and I actually recently just heard another story of somebody that had what's called foot drop. There is, and I'm not diagnosing you with foot drop because I don't actually know what's happening, but if you are losing sensation in one leg and you didn't have an epidural or did have an epidural, if you did have an epidural, most people would blame it on the epidural, but I think this is important to note because you can actually have this with or without an epidural, and one of the options would be called foot drop. So you need to go to your provider and you need to say, I'm losing sensation. They'll probably send you to a neurologist and then they'll check you out and see if there's anything you can do, but sometimes, I want to say sometimes, meaning like most of the time, for nerve stuff, it's sort of a time is of the essence. You want to get checked out and see if you can restore sensation back into your foot. Now, sometimes it's just a wait and see, let's see what happens and go from there. But that is not normal to have any kind of weird tingly sensation, losing sensation, especially if it's on one side rather than both sides, and even both sides is not very good. I would say that does warrant a doctor's visit for you. Oh, this is good. Okay, Gmail says, can you explain a window? These are very medical questions so far. Noticed in a C-section, what's the higher risk, etc. So a window, you're like, what's a window? It's terminology basically on the uterus. So this is specifically for VBAC patients. If you've watched my 2 VBAC videos, or I have a VBAC class, or you are a VBAC, meaning you're going to have a vaginal birth after cesarean, one of the risks we look for is what's called uterine rupture. So you imagine on the uterus, there's a scar, and that scar after the C-section heals together and it fuses and it hopefully becomes very strong. But then you get pregnant again and that scar starts to stretch out. And as it stretches out, the risk, and really what everybody's concerned about for somebody who's having a vaginal birth after cesarean, which can be done, is that that scar would actually split open either during labor, pre-labor, during the birth, and then the contents of the uterus, meaning the baby, amniotic sac, amniotic fluid, etc., would kind of end up floating into the abdomen instead of into your vagina to the outside world. And so we don't want that happening. It can cause bleeding. It can be very serious for both you and your baby. It is a medical emergency. And so what a window would be in the case of somebody likely with a previous C-section. They labor, they have a scheduled C-section, whatever it is, they end up needing another C-section, so a repeat C-section. They open them up, they get to the uterus, and on the uterine muscle, they can see the uterus either starting to split or it's already split. So there was a uterine rupture, likely, or it was starting to separate, and they can see a window inside the uterus. Now, where this really looks like a window is when the water bag is still intact. So your water hasn't broken. And what happens is the uterus splits, and then what you see is like this glossy, clear window into the uterus where you can like see through it and see the baby, and then in theory they would pop it and then baby would come out, and there you go. So that window is serious. It means that the uterus began to split, or they saw it starting to split. So in the case that you kept laboring, likely would mean that you would have had a full uterine rupture at some point, or in theory, you actually did have a uterine rupture, which for subsequent pregnancies, likely your provider is not going to recommend that you would have a VBAC because you already had that scar that split open. If it happened before, it can happen again, versus if you were to have a VBAC, meaning you've had a C-section, you then have the vaginal birth, and then you are having another pregnancy, that vaginal birth, having one, does increase your chances of having another. That was probably more than you were asking for, but the window, moral of the story, is when they look in your uterus and the uterus is separated and they can see inside the uterus because of that uterine rupture. Okay, Lex32393 says, if my first baby was born sunny side up, is my second more likely to be too? So I have 3 videos on sunny side up. You can look for occiput posterior, back labor videos, and My answer to this is yes and no. So if you look at the studies, there is a little bit of a correlation that if it happened before, it could happen again. But there are so many reasons why your baby was positioned this way and sunny side up. If you don't know this, you can go watch those videos. Make sure you do, because those are very helpful, and I give you tips for that. Is where instead of the baby coming out of the vagina looking down, which is the ideal position for the baby's head, for it to fit through your pelvis and for it to like twist and turn and come out a little bit faster, a little bit easier. Instead, it's coming out like literally looking at you, where the back of the head is towards the back of you, towards your tailbone. And babies can come out that way, but it's not really the most ideal. It makes labor a little bit harder. So it can also cause a lot of back pain, meaning back labor. That's why it's been coined back labor, or sunny side up, meaning their face is sunny to the world side up. So if it happened before and there was some sort of structural issue that was causing it, which you would probably never know, then yes, there could be a higher chance. But also, one of the things I always say when you're thinking about second babies, this goes for anyone with their second pregnancy, whatever happened in the first one, great, noted, but clean slate for the next baby. Okay, now it's the same uterus. So if there was a uterine issue, then maybe that would play into it, but it's new placenta, new amniotic fluid, new amniotic sac, new baby, etc. And so we're sort of starting over. And I know it's easy to say, well, it happened last time, it's going to happen again. And can it? Yes. But most of the time you're sort of starting over, and this is why, like, especially in my VBAC class, I talk about a birth debrief. If you had a traumatic birth memory, that will play into the first one. You're going to reference things from your first because you have a frame of reference now. And so it's really important that you do the work to kind of reset your body and say, what happened there happened there. Going forward, I'm going to sort of start over and really hold my hands open, all the things I teach, trust my instinct, go with the flow. Yes, tap into the things that worked from the previous, and then with this one, sort of create your own new birth experience with your second baby. Chelsea Bunn says, question about coffee. What's my go-to coffee? If I'm at home, I make myself a sugar-free vanilla latte in the morning, all day, every day. It's the same thing every time with half and half. And if I'm out and about, I have said this before in previous videos, but you're welcome, because this is like the best and cheapest concoction at Starbucks. So I do a quad shot over ice in a venti cup with whole milk, a splash of half and half caramel drizzle. And it's cheaper and it's delicious. So I lived off of that in nursing school. Okay. El Jumat says, is a manual pump useful for exclusively pumping mamas? Ooh, I have a lot to say about this one. Okay, so when you're thinking about breastfeeding, you're anticipating breastfeeding, you're thinking about the supplies that you need. And I'm gonna speak to the United States. So in the United States, most insurances cover a breast pump. I will link down below Aeroflow. There's a company called Aeroflow where you can go and you put in all your insurance information and they tell you which pump you can get, which ones are free. You can choose the free one, or you can upgrade under your insurance plan to get the pump that you want. This is an amazing program. So I'll link them down below. I always send all of my clients there. So when you're thinking about the supplies that you need, I usually suggest if you are planning on breastfeeding and it's important to you, you do need a breast pump. You don't need to bring it to the hospital, but you will need a breast pump. There is a difference between a manual pump and then an electric breast pump. If you are exclusively pumping, meaning this is going to be like your full-time job, you will not survive with a manual breast pump. I promise you that. You need an electric breast pump. Your hands are going to fall off. You'll end up with carpal tunnel. Like, it is not fun. So a manual pump, though, is really nice for on the go, when you don't have access to electricity, or you just need some relief, like your boobs feel like they're gonna explode, you're out and about, you don't have access to your baby or to a pump, just to kind of take the edge off. So one, you don't end up with clogged milk ducts, engorgement, mastitis, all of that, the complications that can come with that, but then also just with the discomfort. So manual breast pump, super helpful, but not recommended for exclusively pumping mamas. You will be exhausted. And you think about it, when you're pumping on an electric pump, I'm gonna suggest you're doing both breasts at the same time. With a manual pump, unless you have two, you're doing both at the same time, but otherwise it's one at a time, and we're talking 20 minutes. That's 40 minutes of squeezing. That is a serious workout for your hands. Not recommended. Now, the other side note I will state, because I know that Haka, so the Haka is like, I'll link this down below too, one of my favorite products for planning for postpartum. The Haka is they call it a manual pump. but to me, it's not a manual pump at all. It is like a suction cup that you suck on your boob that catches the excess milk and then also kind of like slowly draws out. I love the Haka. Yes, you need a Haka. But if you're a pumping mama, that also is not effective for your pumping. What you would do is when you're feeding your baby on one side, you throw the Haka on the other boob, you catch the milk, you can feed it to your baby, save it for later. My sister, I know, when we used the Haka, like I was so obsessed with this thing. I've always been obsessed with this thing. I was like, oh my God, I'm so obsessed. Look at all this milk. She saved like bags and bags and bags. We had like a whole stash 2 weeks in of freezer milk that was available as breast milk later, and we didn't even have to do any pumping sessions. So get yourself a Haka. That's number one. And two, if you are an exclusively pumping mama, a manual breast pump is not enough. Check out the description box. I'll give you the Aeroflow link, and you can go over there and sign up for your breast pump, and they will get it approved, and it will hopefully be free for you, especially if you're in the United States, and you'll be all set up for your pumping journeys. Trish Buchiactive says, I had spontaneous rupture of membrane, so her water broke on its own, not by a doctor or a midwife. With my first, is it likely for that to happen again? Normal labor and delivery, otherwise, happy birth memory. I'm so happy about your happy birth memory. That also means you've been watching my videos because that's my terminology. Love it. Okay, so if your water broke with the first, the question is, what is the likelihood that it happens again? So this goes back to the previous question that I answered. Flex and flow. Not new body, I suppose. You still have the same body, but new baby, new placenta, new water bag. And there's actually, I was reading recently, there's this study done, I think it's looking at protein intake and the strength of the water bag. And they found that women who had high protein diets had stronger water bags, meaning like the sac surrounding the baby. So let's say your first pregnancy, and this is just an example, and there's lots of variations to this, but first pregnancy, you barely were able to eat meat, you barely had any protein. Second pregnancy, that's all you wanted to eat. In theory, what they found was those water bags are stronger, so the chance that your water breaks in that scenario is less than the first one. Again, flex and flow, new body. It may happen that way or it may not. I would sort of assume, just based on numbers, about 10% of people, their water breaks before contractions. So we're gonna go back to that your chance of your water breaking is about 10%, loosely, flex and flow. Oh, cute. This is a nursey question. Okay. So Romley Julie says, first night solo off orientation. So for those of you that are not labor and delivery nurses, when they graduate nursing school or they're from a previous unit, they come to labor and delivery, they get a preceptor, which is an experienced nurse that trains them. And then they get some sort of orientation. Hopefully it's a long time, but it's anywhere from probably like 6 to 8 weeks to 6 months. And then they're off on their own. So this is her first night solo off orientation. She says she's a previous nurse, but new to labor, which is helpful for sure. She says, is it normal to be so anxious? I also have another nursey question here that let me find. She says, Madeline says, advice for a new grad RN starting in L&D on Monday with like a vomit face. So my answer is, I'm sending you all the love, all the calm vibes. I cried every single day, and my family still talks about it today, where I was on the phone with my mom. I'd call her on my drive home. They were still in Ecuador at the time, and I'd be like, I will never do this. I will never get it. They move so fast. They're doing 6,000 things all at the same time, and I was so overwhelmed. I was like, I will never get this. Fast forward a couple years, a year, 6 months to a year later, I was like, got this, no big deal. So it is so normal to feel overwhelmed. And remember this, patients, when you're in labor, your nurses are seeing a lot. They're working really hard. They may be nervous. They want to give you the best care, but they're still gaining confidence. So give them lots of grace and encourage them. Tell them the things that work and that are nice. And my advice for a new grad nurse that's starting, you will have already started when you saw this, but you'll be a week or so in, would be to take a deep breath and give yourself so much grace. And remember, and I teach this in mentorship, so if you're not in our mentorship, I suggest it, is you're not stupid, you're just learning. And so I said that to myself when I was new all the time, because there were so many moments where I was like, I feel like I'm just stupid. I know I'm not stupid. I'm just learning. I'm not stupid, I'm just learning. But like, it's easy to sort of go that way and get down on yourself, or like, why didn't I know that? Or, oh, I could have done that better. When really, you're not stupid, you're just learning, okay? And say, I'm learning, and use that when you have a moment. If somebody's snippy with you, or somebody's like, oh, why didn't you blah, blah, blah? You're like, I'm just learning. I'm doing my best. I'm just learning. And if you can kind of like engage with that perspective, you're going to be able to learn better, because you're not so worried about everything that you're doing. Am I doing it right? And and second guessing everything. Ask tons of questions. And then, so this is actually 3. Ask tons of questions, and then make friends with your coworkers. That your relationships with your coworkers will bring you a long way. And if they can, like you and you're friends with them, they're going to jump in and help you even more than if you're kind of that like, who's this outsider that's not really interested in getting to know us? Your coworker relationships, some of my best friends are still labor and delivery nurses that I met. One of them being that like was the first nurse that I connected with as a labor and delivery nurse. So make friends, enjoy the ride, and also don't forget to be present and remember that like basic stuff like looking into their eye, calling them by name, telling them you're here for them, making them feel safe and loved actually does help more than we think it does as nurses. That was your insider scoop on nursing life. Oh, woo! Oh, this is a good one. Okay. F. Jones 225 says, does mindset play any role in labor starting? So much to say about this. In fact, I teach like an entire 8-hour class to birth workers and nurses, integrating this into it. So the absolute answer to this is 100% yes. Now, here's my caveat that will labor start eventually, likely, even if your mindset is like, blah, 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 I'm not really paying attention to anything. Yes. Okay. There's biology as well in here, but so incredibly often, I was just telling a client this last night, so incredibly often you will have some sort of like work deadline, or mother-in-law is coming to town and I really need them here to take care of my other child, or, you know, I have to get the nursery ready. And the moment those things are done, you're like, I can relax. And then your body's like, I can go into labor. Okay. So 150% yes. So if you are feeling stressed, if you're feeling like there's those last minute things to wrap up, if you're feeling like, oh, I don't feel ready, I don't feel prepared, eventually you will likely go into labor. But is there a chance that you just don't and you actually need to end up being induced, or that's what your doctor recommends? Yes. Okay. So my recommendations for mindset stuff at the end is 1, education is protective against trauma, and it also helps you get in the mindset of like release. My goal of all my classes is really, and you being here, is really for you to just be able to let go and go, wow, my body is so amazing. I am so strong and so cool, and my body's going to do it. And I just need to let it happen and surrender to the process. That's why I always say, pick up what you can control, let go of the rest. Put your birth preferences together. Plan and get ready in your mind the most you can. And then the best thing you can do is relax your mind. Let go of your anxiety. I know it's easier said than done. Meditation, softening, breathing, taking baths, resting up. All of that lets hopefully your stress hormones, because adrenaline being too high, you just learned this in my most recent video, adrenaline too high counteracts your labor hormones. So we got to lower the adrenaline, help you stay in a state of calm. And that can help you go into labor. Let's go to YouTube, because I could just keep going all day forever, but I want to make sure to look at your YouTube comments. I'm particularly going to start with my previous coffee and questions video and look at your comments there. Shiloh Dawn says, question for next coffee and questions. I'm a Canadian mama. Hi, Canada. We have so many of you. We have so many bundle birth nurses in Canada, and I'm half Canadian. My citizenship papers just came in the mail. We're almost there. I am a Canadian mama. You didn't need all that, but just in case you were curious. And where I am, we don't get to choose our provider or birth center unless you pick the local midwife. It's whoever's on call. Do you have any advice for making a birth plan? I always hear that you should talk to your provider about it ahead of time and whatnot and get their opinion. For prenatal checkups, we see the same OB and prenatal nurse, but when you go into labor, you won't necessarily have that provider on the day of. How can I ensure that my birth plan is respected? This is such a good question. Okay. So this, by the way, for Canadian mamas, this is also extremely common in the United States. So patients or people that are listening, if you're in the United States or really anywhere, ask if the doctor or midwife that you see in the office is the same doctor or midwife that's going to deliver you. Rarely is it the case, okay? So you may be a part of a group. It's who's on call. A couple of things. Is it worth it to still put together your birth preferences? And I'll link mine down below. I also have a birth preferences video you can look up. And so the answer is yes. I think the process of going through and putting together your birth preferences is still valuable for you to know what's important to you, for your partner, your doula, to know what's important to you. Yes, is it important to still talk with your provider about it? Yeah, bring it up in your appointment. And then what I would say is, as the caveat is, okay, so I know you likely won't be the person delivering me. Are these preferences appropriate for the way that your colleagues practice? Because a lot of times a group of doctors are kind of the same vibe. I know in LA, I know a lot of groups out here. And like, if you're going to this group, you sort of like get this kind of feel. If you go to this group, you can expect this. And so they can give you an idea. Yeah, like there's like, say you want to deliver on all fours, right? That you don't want to lay on your back. You want to be on all fours. That's really important to you. I would say, how many of your providers would feel comfortable doing that? And they should be able to give you an idea. And then really when the birth preferences becomes most important is at the birth. So whether it be for your nurses there or the doctor there, if you don't show the birth preferences guide to your provider ahead of time, it kind of doesn't matter as much as it matters in the moment. So bring your birth preferences, tell the nurse, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Does this seem realistic? You know the doctor that's on for that day. Is there anything on this that you feel like is gonna be like a non-negotiable no? Or are they gonna be really open to it? What do I need to fight for? And how can you as the nurse help me advocate for what's important to me? Always through the lens of safety, okay? So really, talking to your provider ahead of time is bonus points, but in the moment, what happens is it becomes this communication tool between your nurses and your doctor on the day of for them to go, oh, cool. I have an idea what they're looking for. I have an idea what's up. And it's like quick and easy so you don't have to be answering the same questions over and over again. I have so many questions about twins. It is on the short list. I will do a twin video coming up, so subscribe down below so you don't miss it. And I see you, all you twin mamas. I will put together a video for you. Don't you worry. Okay, Day Mickey says, I plan on getting an epidural. I'm a wuss. I will answer your question, but let me just tackle this for a second. Just because you choose to get an epidural does not mean that you are a wuss, okay? There is no shame in getting an epidural. Remember, we are coping, not suffering. You are not a wuss. Let's give credit where credit's due. You created another human. I think that's like the farthest thing from a wuss, but so I can't like ignore that comment, but I'll let it fly. She says, but I hope to labor as long as possible before getting it. Perfect. That's the goal. That's what I teach in my childbirth classes. She says, tips for delaying the epidural. I also want to continue to move and change positions after getting it. Should I ask for a walking epidural? Do all providers give that option? So many good questions in this. Okay, so the answer to the walking epidural question is not every hospital has the option of a walking epidural. In fact, it's very, very rare. So ask your provider, ask on your hospital tour if that's an option. Otherwise, it's probably not an option. I'm gonna assume it's not an option. We're gonna go from there. The answer or the question was tips on delaying the epidural. I want to move and change positions even after getting it. An epidural does not remove all sensation. You should still be able to change positions. And even if you can't, your nurses or your doula should help you change positions every 30 minutes to an hour. If they're not, just put that on your birth preferences, request it. It's really good for progress. It's really good for helping baby navigate the pelvis. My most recent analogy is that like baby is pinballing through the pelvis where it's like ding, 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 ding. Let me find my way to the exit, okay? So it needs to have like a little bit of like help with the pinballing versus like no motion to kind of help it through, okay? I don't know if that was helpful, but I hope it was. Tips for delaying the epidural would be one, for sure to take my coping with labor class. Whether you're planning on an epidural or not, that's the laboring at home portion. That's the teaching point that helps your partner to know how to help you in labor. So for one, that master your breathing techniques, which I teach in my coping with labor class, but I also have 2 videos on. And then I would say that if you watch one of my childbirth classes, that makes it real simple for you. There's like a cheat sheet that comes with that like lays it all out for you, which is really helpful. But if you watch my stages of labor video, when to go to the hospital video, and you literally follow that criteria, I feel pretty, and you're honest about following that criteria, I feel very confident that that will help you get to the hospital at the right time, loosely, which is about 5, 6 to 7 centimeters. You get your epidural and voila, you have your baby. Jessica Armitage says, my last baby was pretty big, 9 pounds, 6 ounces. That is a very big baby. God bless you. And ended up being born with a shoulder dystocia. Okay, keep that in mind. Can you talk a bit about what a shoulder dystocia is, how it's addressed during delivery, and what are the chances of it happening in future births? Thanks so much. Love watching your videos. Love you too. So a shoulder dystocia, and actually, let me show you exactly what's happening with a shoulder dystocia. So baby is navigating through this hole in the pelvis. This is the crash course here. As baby comes down, it comes through, the head comes out, and it's like through the pelvis. What happens in a shoulder dystocia, and a higher risk for a shoulder dystocia is a big baby, is the head comes out and it's literally hanging outside your vagina, and then the shoulder gets stuck at the pubic bone. Okay, usually it's tucked in like this, but it tries to come and we're like, it's stuck. That is a shoulder dystocia. It is a medical emergency. The goal would be we need this baby delivered quickly, or we're at risk for complications. So there's lots of different maneuvers that your provider will do. The very first step, and the two that I'm really going to talk about, is usually what happens is we take your legs and we pull your legs back like as far as possible. So, and this can feel really scary, and especially when things are happening quickly, it can feel like, what the heck is happening? Oh my gosh. And so we bring your legs back as high as possible to really tilt your pelvis. And what that does is it can help tilt the baby's shoulder under the pubic bone. And sometimes, actually in the majority of times, that's all you need. The other quick thing that we do as nurses, which can seem very rough and kind of barbaric and sounds really ridiculous to say, but it actually works, and I'll show you why, is that when the shoulder is stuck here, what we need to happen, even though the shoulders are wider than the head, they actually they'll go like this. So like the head goes out and then it's like shoulder through the pelvis. But if they're stuck, they need to go shoulder. So what do? We actually collapse the shoulders together so that it can fit under the bone. And how we do that is by taking our fist with all of our strength on top and pushing the shoulder on the top of the pubic bone. It seems really rough. Now, most of the time, and I can think of so many times that I've been that nurse to push on top of the pubic bone, and you literally feel the shoulder bubble on the top of the pubic bone and go like this, and it's like zoop, and it's under. So it's very effective. Those are the two maneuvers most likely used. They're the first lines of treatment, and they're most of the time they're going to resolve the shoulder dystocia. Doctors can do different twists, turns, pulls. Worst case scenario, they actually push the baby back up, and we go for a C-section. That rarely happens. I know Justine Bundelberg Nurses has had that happen. God bless her, but that's very, very rare, okay? Most of the time it feels like forever, but we're talking like 10, 20, 30 seconds versus like minutes and minutes, okay? So yes, it's a complication, and then your first lines of treatment would be legs back, hand on top, like pushing on your pubic bone, or above, it's really above your pubic bone by the nurse, and you're like, why are you jumping on top of me? Why are you pressing so hard on my belly? But it's because it is an emergency, and it's a way to collapse the shoulders inwards so they're not so wide. So this is my last question, and there's a couple, it was like so random that these are both here from different people. This comes from Hannah. She says, is it a bad idea to try to give birth without an epidural if I have a hypertonic pelvic floor? I had an epidural with my first, and I'm pregnant with baby number 2, trying to avoid an epidural, but my OB basically said, oh, you'll definitely want to do an epidural the second time as well because of your pelvic floor. Do you think that's legitimate? So here's my answer to this. Whether or not you want to go without an epidural, to me, is totally separate from your pelvic floor, okay? Having an epidural or not, the only difference between your labor is the fact that it removes the pain sensation. You still feel pressure, but you no longer feel pain. So to me, if you want to go without an epidural and you have a hypertonic pelvic floor, which I'll tell you what it is in a second, okay. Now, the question is, does it make it harder with a hypertonic pelvic floor? So what a hypertonic pelvic floor is, in your body, we have our pelvic floor. Our pelvic floor supports all of our pelvic organs. I have talked about this 100 times in various videos, but basically, and in my breathing video in particular, I talk about softening the pelvic floor. So go to my breathing video, and the third type of breath that I teach is gonna be really helpful for you to be practicing up until your labor and then throughout your labor. So it means there's lots of tension in the pelvic floor, which is important for labor because we want it to release the baby out. And if it's tense, that can cause discomfort, pain, and potentially slow down your labor. So my suggestions to you are gonna be a side lying release. You can Google spinning babies. They have a great demonstration of how to do that. Watch my Engage the Baby videos. Do the deep breathing exercises to engage the pelvic floor. If you see a pelvic floor therapist, go see a pelvic floor therapist. And then the other sort of side note is that the labor hormones soften the pelvic floor. Lots of movement in labor. That's going to lubricate the area and kind of help to soften it. So again, like hypertonic pelvic floor, that's what you can do about it. I would be more concerned about it slowing down your labor or affecting the labor progress than I would you not coping with the contractions. If you want to cope with contractions and go without an epidural, then Godspeed ahead, like go for it. I don't see how that would necessarily affect whether or not you can do it or not. It may make it a tiny bit harder. You may have some more discomfort, but also like doing those deep breathing exercises into it and really like intentionally with your mind starting to release and the weight of the pregnancy, the hormones, all of that, I think that'll help you out. Thanks everyone for being with me here today. Thank you so much for asking such amazing questions. If your question wasn't answered today, that's okay. Guess what? I'm back next month for more of your questions. So make sure you comment down below with a question that you have for a future coffee and questions. And then make sure you follow me on Instagram so you can hit up the poll when I do poll those questions for the next month's questions. And then you can also check out all the other things and the other education that I have going on over there. Make sure you check out the description box down below and go on over to Ana Luisa Jewelry, and the link is there for your 20% off promo code and get yourself a nice set. I'm obsessed with their mama necklace. And so if you're looking for a gift for yourself, for a loved one, for whatever kind of holiday, or just to spice up your life, you can take advantage of the 20% off promo code I have down below for that. Make sure you check out my classes. I know I mentioned a bunch of them, but really if you're trying to feel confident, if you're trying to feel ready, if you're trying to go without an epidural, make sure you take a childbirth class. My suggestion is gonna be the all class bundle. That's the best overview of all of my classes to get you totally ready, totally prepared and confident for your upcoming labor and birth. And then until next time, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you soon. Bye. What is the best way to just losing sensation in foot VBAC okay, for it to flip. Very thoughtful questions that I'm going to start with. That's very wow.